We are not a monogamous species. It's a social construct. And I get attacked for saying things like this, but sexual monogamy, from an evolution point of view, is not a good idea. That's why we have a reasonably high rate of people who have extramarital affairs.
So, do you think we're all somewhat pretending to be monogamous? Who do you think struggles with it more, men or women?
We are back again on another episode of the Squeeze Podcast, and this is your boy Juice, and we're about to get into a lot today. We're going to get into some debates, and today we're in the debate of the world's leading expert on the world's leading expert on men's health and development in relationship. This is her.
High rate of people who have extramarital affairs.
So, do you think we're all somewhat pretending to be monogamous? Who do you think struggles with it more, men or women? And you.
Ooh, what do y'all think about that? Who struggles with it more, men or women being monogamous? And is that the way we should be?
That there's not a difference in well-being and satisfaction between polyamory or monogamy?
Absolutely none.
How do we know this?
Because we've done studies on it. And I've committed the last 2 decades of my life to understand the neuroscience of love.
Dr. Anna Machin is the Oxford-trained evolutionary anthropologist.
Using science to decode attraction,
attachment styles,
love addiction.
Now, the crucial roles of the father.
So here's the thing. When we look for a partner, we don't know we're doing it. And it involves 2 very distinct areas of the brain. So there's the unconscious stage. That's where you take in loads of sensory information about them. So for example, if you're a woman, you can smell genetic compatibility.
Wait, so men can't smell women, but women can smell men?
Well, you can smell them, but it's not going to give you any information about genetic compatibility. So your brain is going to help you assess whether they're any good for you. If you get a good ping, certain chemicals at the very core of the brain take away the fear and gives you the motivation. Now, human love is so complicated. So for example, the chemistry that underpins love is also involved in neurodiversity.
So if I have ADHD or autism, how am I more likely to struggle in love?
This is really, really important. First of all,
Dr. Machin, why are you talking about fatherhood?
the way our culture treats fathers is wrong. The myths we carry about fathers are wrong. Men have a very
right there.
specific role in child development. And I wasn't expecting to find this when I first started, but it's fundamental for a child to thrive and survive and be successful.
Now, this one thing I absolutely agree with her on. Men and fathers in the child's relationship is absolutely key. And in today's society, where so many fathers are missing in our children's lives, this part right here is absolutely key. I would really hope that you guys can help me by jumping down in those comments, telling me how you feel about this content, particularly right here, and then this right here for free for you. Just hit that like button and hit the subscribe button for me if you want to get into more conversations just like this. Let's get it.
So what we're finding is
Dr. Anna Machin, what is the mission you've so far committed your life to? And I guess adding to that, why?
I've committed the last 2 decades of my life to understanding human love and understanding human close relationships. Because as an anthropologist, I understand that love sits at the center of what it is to be human. If you strip everything else away and you've got your food, you've got your water, the next thing you need are your relationships, is your love. And we are so lucky as a species to experience love in quite a complex way with many different types of people and beings. And we know that it's like the number one thing in terms of your health, mental, physical, your longevity, your happiness, your well-being. And I think we need to understand it, particularly in a world where we're starting to get a lot of input in terms of technology and AI, and the world is getting quicker. We need to go back to who we are really at our core and what love really is. And I suppose that's what I've given my life over to, is to really explain to people, who are you? Because your love is.
Now, what she's saying right here is absolutely pivotal to the roles that we have with each other today, because a lot of you guys do not take into consideration the wholeness of yourself when in consideration in relationships. You're always looking for somebody to complete a part of you, which is not correct. But I'm going to let her dive into it and give you a more proper terms and more proper sense of what's actually going on. But what she also touched on, and I want to make very apparent, is that you have to disconnect and disassociate with all of the mass media that feeds you these lies. All right, let's get back.
Your identity, essentially.
And you use the word anthropologist there. What is an anthropologist?
Okay, so an anthropologist is somebody who studies the human species. I'm an evolutionary anthropologist, which means I sit at the scientific end of it. You can sit at sort of the cultural end or the scientific end. And I study how evolution has shaped us and also why things evolved. So, for example, why did love evolve? Why did fatherhood evolve? And I use lots and lots of different techniques, scanning and genetics and all these different things to be able to answer that question.
I've got another book sat in front of me here, which is, I guess, somewhat linked to love, which is about fathers.
Yeah.
So how did these two things come together? We've got a book here about love, and then we've got a book about fatherhood, and you're very well known for talking on the subject of fatherhood. What?
So I love how we have this man, the interviewer, saying that, well, how did love and fatherhood come together? It's crazy that today's society has us so disconnected that we can't see love coming from fatherhood. It was a point where I was younger, and the only thing you could hear about a father was the father will give you that tough love. But at the end of the day, it was still love. It wasn't the one that was all so soft that your mother would give you, but it was a different type of love that gave you structure.
What is the link? How did the link come to be? And why? Why are you talking about fatherhood?
We have the wrong idea about fathers. The way our culture deals with fathers, treats fathers is wrong. The myths we carry about fathers are wrong. The influence they have on their children and ultimately on our society is fundamental. So the link came because I had a child. And like most couples who have a baby, you know, we talked about it. We were like, we're going to start trying to have a baby. Then we became pregnant, which was great. Did the pregnancy test together, went to the antenatal classes, went to the scans, all wonderful. Went in to have the baby, and it didn't turn out how it was supposed to. I was very, very ill. I lost a lot of blood. My daughter was poorly when she was born. And afterwards, I was offered loads of counselling. Would you like a debrief? Would you like? And I was like, well, to be absolutely honest, I'm okay, because I passed out. I literally don't remember anything. But my husband witnessed it all. And he basically saw a car crash in slow motion with two people in it who he loved very deeply. And I completely understand why. It was a very stressful information, but nobody explained to him what was happening. And so they mopped me up, took my baby, took her to neonatal care, and left him in the room on his own. And I was breathing very shallowly, and he was scared. And the cleaner came in and said, and was cleaning away, and he just said to the cleaner, "Do you think she's dead?" Because I was breathing so shallowly. And the cleaner went, "No, I don't think so, mate. I think they would have told you if she was dead." But after that, he couldn't talk about the birth. He couldn't imagine the birth. He couldn't deal with the emotions from the birth for a good 2 years afterwards. And he was really worried about having another kid. And this made me really angry, actually, because I was like, hold on, we went into this together, and he's literally been discarded, like he doesn't matter. And to me, he's fundamentally important. And then as our daughter grew, I saw the amazing bond he built with her, how integral he was to her life. And so when I went back to university at Oxford to study and to do my work, I thought, well, I'm an anthropologist. Okay, let's look up what do we know about fathers in our society. And there was literally nothing. There was a lot of work on absent fathers, and their impact is fundamental, we know that. And there was a lot of quite stereotypical work on young fathers, teenage fathers. Nothing on the majority of dads who, whether they co-reside or not, stick around. So I started with some really simple questions. What happens to a man when he becomes a father? Does he alter biologically, psychologically? How does he build his bond with his child? What's the nature of...
And I want to stop just so we can talk about something very important that she did say at the beginning of this part, is that as a father, even in the process of the birth of your child, you are considered very much secondhand. You aren't given the consideration of somebody concerned for your family. You are meant to sit there and bear the brunt of it. And it's crazy because if her husband was a concerned type and said, well, is she dead? None of the doctors could confirm whether, you know, what was going on, giving life to either the child or anything. And then he saw, you know, if you were somebody who ever saw a birth go on, I've seen my sisters give birth. I've seen birth on videos in health class. It's not a great sight to see from the third person point of view, because when you're just having your legs hoisted up and you pushing it out, it's not the same sight from the other way around. And I do understand where that man is coming from, because it's like, you may have particular questions and concerns, and it's just like, well, it's up to you. Where other people will give you a full dossier explanation on what's really going on.
So the question that's front of mind for me is what is it upstream that made us devalue the role of a father? Where did that come from? Because fathers are somewhat seen as surplus to requirement, I think. Where did that come from?
It's cultural. It's entirely cultural, because there are cultures in the world who don't think that. And fathers are very, very integral. So, in fact, one of the most hands-on fathers in the world is from the Aka tribe in the Congo. They keep physical contact with their children for 50% of the day. They carry them around. They co-sleep. Not the mum. They co-sleep with the child. They are the one that carries the child through the jungle when they're hunting and gathering. They are the one that sings to the child, reads stories to the child. They even, and this is...
And as you can see, I just want to make this very prevalent. Like, it's a very Western mindset. The more rural and the more closer you get to a standard life, a life before technology, the closer you get to the truth of what's really the frick going on, and nothing of this other bullshit. Because we've gotten so smart that we trick ourselves now into believing the absolute bullshit that we make up in our minds.
The bit that always gets the headlines. They even will offer a nipple to soothe the child until the mother is ready to breastfeed. So it's cultural. We have this idea that, and it partly came very much from the Victorian period, where fathers were seen to be disciplinarians and providing the money. And that was the Victorian idea of being a father. It's also to do with our politics and society for a long time. So women weren't able to go out to work, and that's where we've remained till very, very recently. But there's no biology behind that. That's entirely cultural. And I think also it's very much the case. Yes, women today, we have contraception, so we can control our production of children. We can earn our own money. We can protect ourselves. We can look after ourselves. So actually, in one sense, you think, well, yeah, what's the dad for? Because I can do all those things which historically the father had to do when women's positions were different. But
is that the question, women? Today, is that the question? What is the father for? If that's what we have to ask ourselves, we are absolutely in the wrong place in this world, because it's so much bigger than what is a father for.
And we've sort of carried on with that, and there's become this mantra of actually then we just don't need them. I mean, I've even been to lectures where they've decided that the Y chromosome is going to become obsolete, and that we really won't need dads at all, even to conceive children at some point. And which to me sounds ludicrous. And that's where it's come from. And we've embedded that, and we embedded it in our media. So dads were always bumbling or useless or absent. You know, daddy pig is the ultimate.
And see, this is something that's becoming major too, what she's saying, the literal want and thought to ex-nay men as a whole, and to culturally believe that you will be able to reproduce asexually. That means without sexual reproduction, you guys. That you're just going to be able to spawn another person beside you, and that's the way it's going to be. That's absolutely sick work.
Bumbling, useless father, and we laughed at it. We think it's funny.
Maybe the way that these two subjects initially do sort of dovetail into each other is when we think about the state of love and the role of men and women. You touched a bit on it there when you talked about how women are earning more and more, so men are becoming a little bit more apparently obsolete in what they can offer to a monogamous relationship. There were some stats that I was looking at before you arrived, and I'll read them out to you. The stats say that only 38% of single women are actively looking to date versus 61% of single men, which is a huge gap. Morgan Stanley projects that 45% of women aged 25 to 44 will be single by 2030. In England and Wales, a record almost 40% of adults have never married. For women aged 30 to 34, the figure is now almost 60%, which is the lowest ever. Women initiate roughly 70% of divorces, showing a greater willingness to exit marriages that are unsatisfying than men. And obviously, I think one of the points you were sort of touching on there is that women are now much more educated as it relates to things like college degrees compared to men. There's this bigger picture around relationships and love that kind of sits in the background of this, and women's rise and independence, which I think we can all agree is always going to be a positive thing. But downstream from that is a clear issue in how we form monogamous heterosexual relationships these days. And also, like, you know, part of the reason, one of many reasons I wanted to speak to you is I was thinking about my friendship group and the women that I know. And more, I spoke to a friend of mine a couple of weeks ago, and I said to her, like, what are your goals? And she said, oh, I currently have about 150 plants, and I want to get to about 250 plants. I said to her, do you want to get married? Do you want to have kids?
And do you hear that? I'm not trying to be rude, but as a life goal, that's horrible. That's nothing. I mean, granted, you planted some plants, but as an overall look at life, people had better complete lives. You had a family, you had homes, you explored the world, things that we are taking for granted. You want 200 plants, you want 100 more plants. I want to hear what he has to say, but this is what the problem is today. We don't take into consideration what life really entails. We are so smart that we think we'll live forever. We're so smart that we now think we can somehow have babies with the air. We're so smart that we don't care if we don't make it another 100 years. And it's not just about you, because you just so mad at the world that you live in right now that you're not caring about the people that have to live in it after you. I think a video game said it the best, and that's Claire Obscure. It's for the ones who come after. Sit there and think about it.
No interest in that.
Yeah.
What I want is I want to get to the point where I have financial freedom so I can buy a house, and I want to get over 200 plants.
Yeah.
And it sounds kind of funny, but it's an increasingly familiar story that I'm hearing, which is once upon a time, the goal would have been get married, have kids, build a life together. Now it's more individualistic.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts here? What is the state of love at the moment?
Well, it's definitely more individualistic. We've become a more individualistic society. So we are looking more at, yes, what do I want rather than what in a way contributes to the community, which is what collectivist societies do. Women in the past had to get married. You couldn't have children out of wedlock. That was definitely not acceptable. You had to get married because that's where your financial security was. And that's what you did. Quite often, those marriages weren't based on love. Mm-hmm. They were based on very pragmatic decisions about this is where I need to be. So women have been freed from that. They don't.
So I just want y'all to make sure y'all understand that there was a structure to it. It wasn't about love. And once we removed the state of structure and what you needed to do to survive, we brought love into the picture. And that's where I feel like a lot of things got convoluted, but it also was a very much perk because you got to be with people that you actually felt you needed to be with. But then we lost in translation that structure that came with it. What does it take to be in a marriage? How do you make a marriage last as long as it's supposed to last? And that's a lifetime, not just for a moment. Because we're so free. Like, you got, see, we went from this side and we got all the way over here. Overextended. We were supposed to stop right here in the middle. And there was a glorious point. You guys in the comments can let me know when that was. But I know it's past us now because we're at the opposite end.
Have to do that anymore.
The
other thing to say is they've realised that romantic love isn't the only love in the box. What we call their key survival critical relationship in many cases, so the relationship that's going to support them emotionally, physically, practically, all those sorts of things, are their female friends, their chosen families. And that's who they're turning to. And that's why we're seeing less and less women saying that romantic love is a priority or parental love is a priority. And in one sense, that's great, because actually it's showing that all these loves are equal. And I can love in that way. And I think that's wonderful in one sense. But yes, it does mean that we're turning away from that idea of long-term cohabiting companionship. And so when people say to me, for example, is marriage going to die? Are we going to end? No, I don't think it is. We will always, for example, relationship, whatever sex you are and whatever sexuality you are. I think that will always exist. But we're going through a bit of a sea change. We're also seeing it in older women, postmenopausal women, because it's only really very recently that we've got to a point where we have a long postmenopausal lifespan as women. Usually, 100 years ago, if you got to 50, which is the age for menopause, the standard age, you were lucky if you were still alive. But now that period of time could be 20, 30, 40, even 50 years. So I think women post 50, and there's been a massive upside.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna read this for y'all. So we want to get all the facts. So the doxa community is saying this. There has been a clear rise of divorces initiated by women over 50 in both the United States and the UK. In the US, it has doubled since the 1990s when I was a baby. And in the UK, divorces among women 65 plus rose 38% from 2005 to 2015, often due to financial independence and life reassessment. Okay. And social shifting norms. So what is this saying is the way that the world has been telling them is that they'll do better on their own. And I'm really curious as if, now this is 10 years later from that statistic, is if they interview these same people and ask them, are they happy with their decisions and has their life been better since? Because it all matters. It's all relevant.
In post-50 divorces instigated by women is they look at their partner and they think, you were a great dad. I selected you when that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to have children, I wanted to build a family. But I look at you now and I think, but is this the person I want to do the next phase of my life with? Because that's a very different set of needs. And so we're seeing women actually looking, going, no, do you know what? I'm going to start afresh. I'm going to do something different. And it might be they look for a different relationship, or they might be, they decide, I'm not going to have another romantic relationship.
What is the different set of needs, just out of curiosity? I want to make sure that my partner doesn't dump me when she hits 50.
Okay, the difference is, so when we are younger and we look for a partner for a romantic relationship, we don't know we're doing it. There are two stages of attraction in romantic love. There's the unconscious stage, which we share with all the mammals. And then there's the conscious stage, which is very different. That involves your neocortex, which, looking at this, is this big walnut bit on the outside. Human love is special because it involves two very distinct areas of the brain. So this is the limbic area of your brain, this bit in the center here. That's your unconscious brain. That's where your emotions sit, where nurturing behaviors sit, where attachment behaviors sit. It's very evolutionarily ancient. It's been around for millions and millions of years. And this is where initially attraction starts. And what you do is you lock eyes with someone across a crowded room and you take in loads of sensory information about them. So you take in visual information. What do they look like? What does their body shape tell me about their value? How are they moving? Do they look healthy? If you're a woman, you will give them a good sniff, and you can smell genetic compatibility.
Wait, so men can't smell women, but women can smell men?
Well, you can smell them, but it's not going to give you any information about genetic compatibility. So what happens is a woman, the major histocompatibility...
Okay, this is for the guys right here. This is why they tell you want to smell good. And I'm going to reference back to all of these things in the upcoming videos because I do want to talk about male self-grooming and hygiene, because I've seen in various places, not just here in America, that hygiene is a problem and we got to solve that.
Compatibility complex.
What's that?
It underpins your immune system. It's a complex set of genes. And bizarrely, that set of genes also underpins your...
The major histocompatibility complex, that's crazy, is a high cluster of highly diverse immune system genes that also influence body odor, okay? Numerous studies have shown that women can subconsciously detect MHC-related scent cues and genetically prefers the smell of men with different MHC genes in order to enhance immune diversity in their potential offspring. So something that I know about this whole little pheromone thing that they're speaking of is if you really want to smell good, you need to be having a daily habit, or not even a daily habit, but a frequent habit of eating your vegetables, guys. I know a lot of y'all don't even like vegetables, but having some celery will majorly increase this because it also opens up a certain, MHC scent cue for ladies that will be more receptive to them. And of course, you have to take a damn bath and add some lotion and oils to your body.
Okay. And in women, they can smell how genetically close a male's MHC is, major histocompatibility complex, how close it is to theirs. Because you don't want too close, because you don't want to inbreed. Also, you want it distant because then your child gets a really lovely, diverse immune system because they've got a diverse set of genes underpinning it. So you smell them. It's not a conscious thing. So people say to me, oh, but, What about aftershave? What about perfumes? It's not conscious. You do not know you're doing it. And one of the things that will be fed into your limbic area is the result of that little test. If you're a woman, what do they smell like?
How do they know this? Have they tested this?
Okay, we've tested this in several ways. There was the very famous T-shirt test, which telly people love, where you make a load of men put on a very plain T-shirt. They're not allowed to wash. They're not allowed to use deodorant. They're not allowed to do anything. Wear it for 24 hours. Then we put it in some Ziploc bags. And we went to get some poor unsuspecting woman to sniff them all. And the idea is that the one she finds most attractive to sniff is the one which is genetically furthest away from her. And it does work. It works. When you genotype her, you can see that they are different. We don't have to do that anymore. We have very sophisticated genotyping technology now. If you really wanted to, there's a company in Switzerland that will do it for you. So you can spit on something, send it off with your partner, and they will tell you how close your major histocompatibility complexes are.
I'm just wondering why men didn't evolve to be able to do that.
We think it's probably because the cost to a woman of getting it wrong and having a baby who is basically too genetically close is much greater than it is for a man, because she is basically taking herself out of that opportunity to reproduce for 9 months plus the bit after to look after that child. Okay. And so that's a really long period of time. Whereas a man, it's not that costly.
Okay.
So you've taken in all that information from the sensors. It's all whirring around in here. And what your brain is actually doing is your brain has got a very complicated algorithm, which is working out the biological market value of the person in front of you. Now, the biological market value is how likely that person is to be reproductively successful. Because from an evolutionary point of view, that's the whole point of your existence, whether you want kids or not, guys.
That's how sexy you are, how good you are with the That's what she's saying.
That's the point, is you have to reproduce, have some lovely, healthy kids, raise them to maturity so they can reproduce, because we just want your genes from an evolutionary standpoint. We're not interested in you as a personality. And so you want somebody who's got the highest likelihood of being good at that. And we can tell that from lots of things to do with how someone looks, the pitch of their voice, how they smell. What men actually do is they look at the waist-hip ratio. You don't know you're doing it, but eye-tracking experiments show that men do it. They don't know that it's completely unconscious. Wonderful studies been done with people walking down the street with, not mentioning to them what we're looking for. They're wearing eye-tracking technology. And what they do is the first thing they glance at, even if they don't know it, is the waist-hip ratio. Before, for example, they will look at the face. And what they're calculating is what that ratio is, because we know cross-culturally, the most attractive ratio is a 0.7. And that is actually a classic hourglass.
Cross-culturally.
See, everybody... Well, even this, you can't make this shit up. Kevin Samuel said it best. I'm going to put that in the clips for YouTube, but listen, y'all. We got to do better with our own health. It works on both sides of the board. As a healthy man, you're more likely to find a mate of your liking. And for ladies, we like an hourglass shape. So you want to have the right type of curves, not just any kind of curves. Because right now, everybody's telling you, oh, you can just have curves. But I'm just saying, a lot of y'all got lumps. And that goes for the guys, too. Get your ass in the gym so that your lumps can at least be loaded lumps. You know what I'm saying? Shouldn't be marshmallow lumps.
Cross-culturally, if we go, and it's nothing to do with weight, because some cultures like bigger weights than other cultures. Nothing to do with weight, it's to do with the ratio. Yeah. And so if we show that ratio to different cultures, they will go, it's that one. And the reason for that is there is a direct link between that ratio and, for example, fertility. So if a woman has that, it shows she's got high circulating estrogen. It shows she's not near menopause, because when we go to menopause, we get more of a male figure. It goes towards 1, the ratio, because of the drop in estrogen and the build-up in testosterone. So we know that. There's a link between 0.7 and a range of illnesses, chronic illnesses such as diabetes, heart disease, certain forms of cancer. So actually what you're assessing there is how healthy, how fertile is this woman? So if I take myself off the market for a period of time, am I going to end up with some kids? And is she healthy to raise them?
In those eye tracking studies, what do women look at?
Women look at slightly different things. And for women, what's really interesting is it's not as visual. So women look at the shoulder waist ratio. So that's, yes, there we go. And what you're looking
shoulder
for as
and
a
jaw
woman is a triangle.
But no, that's why you got to have a chiseled jaw, the square shoulders. Can't be hunched over, you know what I'm saying? That's why I'm saying you have to get in the gym. You have to get right with yourself, because you can work on all of that. Don't get too small where you can't see the definition or the defined ratio, because you do want to, as a man, you want to be the square T situation. For the ladies, you want to be the hourglass. All right. This is just the information you need to know to better yourselves, guys.
So nice broad shoulders, narrow waist.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the ideal there is 1.6. What I will say before men rush off and measure their weight is really only Olympic athletes have 1.6.
1.6 meaning the top half should be 1.6 bigger
than your waist.
Okay. So if my waist is, let's say, 100.
Yes.
That's how bad my maths is.
Yes, this needs to be 160.
160, okay.
Yeah.
So my waist is 100, the top half is 160.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. But that's actually really only Olympic athletes, so please, everyone, don't rush off and worry. But what that's showing is actually certain things which are desirable in a male.
I was saying get as close as you can as possible, though. Don't let her just tell you, don't rush towards it and get it. Listen, get as close as you can to the ratio, golden ratio.
So things like physical strength. So if you have a big upper body and a narrow waist, first of all, it shows you're not holding fat around here, which is a real sign of ill health for men. It shows you that you're very fit around here. It shows that you've got very broad shoulders. You are muscular. You are able to protect and provide. It's a sign of reasonably high testosterone. Testosterone is linked to success in men.
Okay.
So it shows that I'm a successful person in our society that's successful socially and successful financially.
Testosterone is linked to success in men.
Yes, because it makes you very competitive.
Okay.
So we get all these things, you take all that in, you take in that visual information, you do your little algorithm in your brain, which obviously you don't know is happening. If you get a good ping, as in, yes, this person has a good biological market value, I like that, what happens is in the very core of the brain, in the middle, so this is the very core of the brain here, there's a structure in there called the nucleus accumbens. It's full of dopamine and oxytocin receptors.
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
That fires off. Goes completely mad if we look at it on the screen, and dopamine and oxytocin flood that system. And the reason why they are important is, in a way, they are the hormones of attraction. So oxytocin lowers your inhibitions to starting new relationships. Okay, so it takes away the fear. And the way it does that is it quietens your amygdala. So the amygdala is a tiny little structure down here at the bottom, and it's where fear sits. And that's the thing that, if you're not feeling confident, has that monologue in the back of your head going, okay, you're just not very good at this. You're going to walk across the bar, you're going to say hello, and they're going to humiliate you. So it quietens that area. We see less activity there. So you've got more confidence. Also, oxytocin makes you feel quite chilled. It's quite nice. And then dopamine is also released, because dopamine is your hormone of motivation. And if you just had oxytocin, you might be so chilled, you sat on the bar stool and you did not move, because you're having a lovely.
So I hope that y'all are paying attention to this, because if you are having yourself very competitive in what you're doing, if you're not getting out and doing it, putting belt to ass, getting the feet to the ground in what you believe in, you ain't gonna make it, bro. And it shows in your dating life. All right? It shows in the potential partners that you have. And even me sitting back on myself and looking at some of my past relationships, man, when I was down bad, I had relationships, but they were definitely not my best. But this goes to show you why it's so important for you to pick who you are going to be with. All right, let me let her rock.
Time. So dopamine is there to go, no, you actually have to go.
Because they should be driving you to be the best version of yourself. That's what I'm saying. And that's what we're doing here today. So if you're listening to this, this is just a testament on what you need to be doing. We are not just listening to this stuff and not taking notes on what we need to be doing, both men and women today. All right, let's get it.
Across the bar and you have to say hello. And so they work really, really well together. And they also work together to make your brain more plastic.
So I have to ask you then, if I'm a single person,
yes,
and with what you've just told me about the brain, I'm trying to increase the probability that someone will be attracted to me and form a relationship to me, what kind of behavior do I need to be embodying to, because I want to reduce the fear part of their brain so that they're more comfortable, and I want that oxytocin and dopamine to be firing.
Yes.
And I have a perfect video for that. We're going to get into that one on another episode, but as we go on, make sure y'all look out for Home Math, because he breaks down what it is you should be doing, what you should be executing to maximize what it is that you want in this lifetime and how you can ascertain it. It's very colorful, and he's a math genius, so we'll break it down another day.
Absolutely. So quite often people say to me, how can I hack my first date? So the way you can hack your first date is you can do an activity which releases beta endorphin and dopamine and oxytocin. The best one I have found, which I appreciate is a niche
Workout
interest,
in the morning.
is some form of dancing in couples, ballroom dancing,
Workout in the morning.
tango, whatever it is. Because first of all, you're touching. So you get released oxytocin and beta endorphin. They're both released by touch. You're moving around. As any gym bunny knows, exercise produces beta endorphin. Hopefully you're not that great at this, so you're going to laugh a lot because you're actually a little bit rubbish. Okay, so you're releasing lots and lots of lovely oxytocin, dopamine, and beta endorphin doing that. Then afterwards, you need to go and have a curry. Okay, because beta endorphin evolved initially as your body's painkiller. That's still a role it has. Over time, it's been co-opted into our social sphere. But we know you have pain receptors in your gut. So if you have a curry, your gut gets a little bit irritated because it's a little bit spicy, so don't have a korma, and it produces beta endorphin. And we know that that will also help you feel more euphoric, help you feel more relaxed, and help that person be more attracted to you because they will also get a hit of it. So that's your ideal date. I appreciate it's very niche and not everyone will want to do.
Did y'all hear that? I hope that y'all are listening. Now, all of this bullshit about not going to all these other places, she just gave y'all the gold. If y'all want to take somebody on a date and you want a hack, you need to not be doing these movie dates because movie dates do not get your adrenaline rushing. What you got to do is go out, do something physically active that gets your heart pumping. That's why she said dancing. You could do, roller coasters and then some spicy food. You got to make sure you get that spicy food, and that is bare minimum. That is the bare minimum for a date right there. And then it'll get you remembered.
That, but there are ways.
And then I'm going to take her to the comedy store.
Yeah, and have a really good belly.
See my
laugh,
man over
a
there taking
proper
notes
laugh
too. He's
produces
like, listen,
beta
I need a shot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Had we finished with the...
Well, so what you're doing, your biological market value comes out. As I say, you hit dopamine, oxytocin, your amygdala quietens, you feel much more confident, you feel much more chilled. Dopamine motivates you to walk across the bar and off you go and you strike up conversation. And that is the way attraction works in all mammals. It's completely unconscious. So you don't know any of this is happening. What's different in humans is very quickly after that, particularly once they've opened their mouth, it all starts kicking off in the outer area of the brain, so your neocortex. So the major social area of the brain is here. This is your prefrontal cortex. Mm-hmm. And your prefrontal cortex is where all those social abilities sit, so trust, reciprocity.
And this is why it's better for a lot of y'all to just shut the hell up. Because what she said is some of y'all can be very attractive, but y'all say the wrong things and it fires off the wrong things in people's heads. Catch the vibe first. See what people are really like before you say too much about yourself. Because nowadays I see people giving up too much stories and too much backstory about their damn self before we've even gotten to a conversation about if I like you or not.
Ability to maintain, ability to abstract about your relationship, or ability to daydream about what it's going to be. And that's where all that sits. So we start seeing firing off here. And what's really important for human love is there is a connection between this area of the brain, which is known as the striatum, which is unconscious, and this area of the brain, the prefrontal cortex. So your unconscious brain and your conscious brain can work together in attraction. And also this area of the brain at the back, which is known as the mentalizing, empathizing area of the brain. So we need to have empathy in relationships. It's the basis of love. So understanding someone's emotional state and being able to respond to it appropriately. And also mentalizing. So mentalizing is mind reading. What's their intention? What are they going to do next? You need it for conversation. You also need...
And y'all know that a lot of these... So that's what we're going to say from now on. It's not mind reading or intuition. These women be mentalizing. All right? Y'all heard it? That's the new word. That's a doctor said that. They mentalizing it. They ain't got no intuition. They mentalizing what you said. Make sure you remember that. They mentalize you.
to spot a cheat.
Get my lights up and get my likes up.
Because you need to check someone's intention. So the mentalizing area of the brain is important. The sad bit, and I'll explain this in a minute, is unfortunately that bit shuts down a little bit, which isn't very helpful, but we'll talk about that. So then as soon as they open their mouth, you start to contemplate them consciously. And what you contemplate consciously in terms of your attraction can actually override the unconscious bit. So you might have had this amazing feeling of, lust and chemistry as you walk across the bar thinking, wow, this person's amazing. I'm feeling astonishing. They open their mouth and they say something to you which is just, unconscionable or awful, or they've got no sense of humour, or they're really unkind, or whatever it might be. And suddenly that bit will step in and go, nope. This person is not for me. And that can override the biology. But that's why what we say, and I always say the brain is the sexiest organ in the body, because ultimately it's what you express with your brain that is going to really determine whether or not this love is going to go anywhere. And that's what you say. Because ultimately as humans, the thing that makes us the most successful species on the planet is our brain. Not your shoulder-waist ratio, not your waist-hip ratio. It's actually your brain, because you want your kid to have the most creative, flexible, funny, intelligent, emotionally intelligent brain they can have. And that's what you're looking for in a partner in the long term.
So based on what you know about attraction and falling in love and all those things, what is like the worst thing one could say in terms of the themes, the types of things someone could say that would just completely put you off?
So I think probably the absolutely worst thing you can say, and this comes from a lot of data saying what's the most important, is to say something unkind. So we know, regardless of everything else, the one thing that people want in a long-term relationship is somebody kind. So something critical.
So I'm gonna say this where I disagree with this whole standpoint. So these are the never do this on a date. So we're gonna jump through this quickly. But she said, don't be unkind. Now, if somebody asks you a direct question, best like this, best be honest. If they ask you if they fat, be fucking for real. If they ask you whether this looks nice on them, be honest. Don't be out here, don't be sugarcoating it. Because, and I'm not saying that you have to be an asshole about it. I'm not telling them to tell them that they look dusted from last Tuesday and they don't know why the hell they came out here looking like that. That's ridiculous. But just tell them that you would prefer them to wear something else because that ain't the best or that ain't the most flattering on you. But if they too hard-headed to hear that, then yeah, tell them they look dusted as hell from last Tuesday or they look like 20 years of bounce that ass in the club. All right, so let's let it rock.
Of somebody else in the room, particularly something critical. I mean, you don't know what that person's interests are, but something critical about something that's very important to them. Don't be unkind.
The waiter, waitress.
Yeah, exactly. That's why how people treat, I mean, personally, I find people who treat waiters enraging, badly enraging. That's why. Because it's a real representation of who you are at your core. Or they express a value which goes completely against a value that you have. Because we know in terms of long-term compatibility, it's things to do with personality, it's things to do with long-term values or beliefs that are the most important things. So let's say somebody said something horrendously homophobic or something like that, or something racist. That's an immediate right. No, this person is not for me.
What about icks? Because icks seem to have emerged as like a. I've got a friend of mine who's, she's never been in a relationship. She's just 37 years old, 38 years old.
And see, this is why I don't particularly like that a male expert. I mean, she's saying that the things that women aren't coming to relationship for are things that we used to have the differences on. I don't know how many women and men were married in the time that I was young that had social differences but had beautiful relationships, where now having a social difference is something that will destroy your marriage, when in anything, if you look at marriage as a whole, you have to get over these smaller issues because it's really death do you part. And I don't think that we really understand that that's an absolute. None of us is going to make it out of here 10 toes down. Okay? Nobody is immortal. So you have to plan for the end of your life because it will eventually come to an end. As much as you wish that it will last forever, you want to leave a legacy, something here that said you were here in the first place. At least that's how I would like to live my life.
And I remember one day she was like, Steve, what am I doing wrong? And I'm not, listen, I was never really a dater, so I have no right to tell someone what they're doing right or wrong. But she showed me her dating profile. And in the dating profile, she said to me, I said no to this guy. And I looked at this guy and I fucking hell, he's like a stud. He's beautifully good looking, was really, really kind in the messages he'd sent. She goes, but if you look in the background of his photo, there's boxes on top of his wardrobe. And she was like, so I said no.
Right.
Now, from an evolutionary perspective, you go, okay, maybe he's living at his mum's house, maybe he's just moved in, maybe whatever. Maybe he's not a settled person. But really, there is become a culture of women and men excluding each other based on extremely surface level things. Now I'm like, is that the prefrontal cortex doing its job, or is that something else?
It is the prefrontal cortex doing its job. I would say it's not doing its job terribly well. The ick is a really recent thing that was generated by social media, and this idea of narrowing in closer and closer and closer on what people like to call red flags. And you don't get a lot of information from online dating because you don't get a lot of sensory information to help you make a decision. So people become more and more obsessed with what's in the image. What's in the image? What can I get about
Just
this person?
the image.
And they start to become obsessed with tiny, tiny things. What ultimately people find attractive is very, very complicated. There are so many different things that feed into attraction. Whether or not somebody has boxes on top of their wardrobe is very unlikely to be even vaguely important in terms of compatibility. I don't think they should be called dating apps. I think they should be called introduction apps. And that's actually what the great Helen Fisher said. She said they're introduction apps. They broaden your pool. They make more people available to you. That's it. You're not having a date on that app. You're not learning about that person on that app. You're literally seeing them for the first time, and as soon as you can get in the room with them, and you can let your brain do what it's really good at, 500,000 years of evolution, that's what you should do. Because they handicap your brain. They give you very little information to go into that algorithm.
You said something really interesting there, which kind of dovetails into what I was saying about my friend who's never dated but is struggling in dating. I know a growing number of people that are going on like 100 dates a year and having no luck. And just like mathematically, I go, surely there must have been someone suitable in that pool of 100 people a year that you've met.
Yeah.
What is going on here?
It's two things, I think. First of all, as I've said, it's the low cost of dating apps. So in the old days,
So just so it's clear, because this is very important too, that before, when there was a larger pool, when you didn't have the literal world as your dating pool, you were able to discern a proper partner from within your just township. Now we have to go across state borders and actual continents to find love. If you don't see the problem with that, there is a problem in that. Just letting you know.
Was dating, going on a date was a real investment of time and energy. So you would probably meet someone at work, you'd meet someone at a bar, you'd meet someone through a friend, which was a real blind date, and you'd spend your time thinking, what am I going to wear? And I've got to go somewhere with this person and spend some time with this person, probably some financial investment as well, get myself all ready, spend an evening with them. And that was how you were going to meet somebody. So you invested time, and you weren't going to do that unless you were serious, to be honest, because otherwise I'll stay at home, I'll do something else, I'll go to the pub with my friends. Whereas now, because we can do it, we can literally go on a dating app anywhere, on the tube, while we're cooking dinner, while we're watching Netflix, anytime you want. It's low cost, low investment.
I read a study that showed, it was in a different context, but it essentially showed that the amount you invest in something correlates to the amount that you appreciate the thing.
Absolutely.
So they did this study where they let people into a boring forum without having to pass any entry test. And then they asked them how much they appreciated the boring forum, and people said it's boring.
Yes.
And then they got another group of people, they made them go through this sort of rigorous test to get into this boring forum, and then they asked them how much do you appreciate the forum, they said it's great.
Yeah.
I'm obviously paraphrasing there, but it just showed this link between the amount you invest in a process is the more you appreciate it. And I think back to being, 14 years old going on my first date, and the whole process of getting ready to go to the cinema and thinking about my outfit for 3 days and then going there and being nervous, and I didn't have much money, so this was like a big thing. And then how much, I almost felt like I fell in love with the person really irrespective, just because of the effort I'd put in. I feel like I fell in love with them. So it's partly the low cost thing. It's partly because all those people that, if you were doing it in person, your brain would filter out, let's say there were 100 people in the room, your brain would quite quickly filter out most of them as no, and maybe one or two might do. Because you can't filter in that way on an app,
you kind of take the punt on all these dates because you're like, otherwise, how else am I going to actually meet this person? You can't just have a casual chat by the coffee machine at work or, meet them through some friends in the pub, where you would do that assessment without really making that much effort. Whereas because on a dating app, the only way you can meet that person is to actually go on a date with them and do all that, you will end up going on 100 to do that filtering process. So it's partly that as well. And the last thing is the paradox of choice.
Yeah. So
we are really, really...
So if you're not understanding, I'm going to break it down. So it's already the issue. So this is, please write this down. If I have enough time to edit, I'm going to break it down like this. 1, we have the large access to so many people. Then once you filter out the number of people that you want to supposedly date, you get down to the smaller group. But then you still have this pool here. Now, like she said, you have this magical thing of choice, but it's really an illusion, the illusion of choice. Amongst your people, who are you going to pick? If you waste too much time, you lose somebody. If you don't pick the right person, you're sad about it, and then you wasted time. So what do you use to do it? Well, I'll let you know right now. You structure yourself on what you actually want, and you don't involve yourself in so many people, because guess what? Everybody isn't so special that they're going to be so unique and so great that they're going to be that much better than the next person. Guess what? A lot of people can learn to be better in the areas that you think that they are lacking, because that's what progress is. Let's jump back into it.
Bad at making choices when there's a lot of options. And the paradox of choice is very powerful in relation to dating apps, because literally, particularly if you're good looking and you get a lot of matches, there's like a smorgasbord of people out there that you can carry on flipping, or you can make a choice. And our brains are not set up for that. 100 years ago, when we were trying to find a partner, you would maybe have the people in your village who you grew up with to choose from. If you had a horse, you could maybe have the people in the next village or even a town. Wow. And that was who you chose from. And it was a very small pool. Now you can go anywhere in the world, turn on your dating app, and possibly have, hundreds of people to meet. And your brain can't do
Thousands.
I mean, we can all think about it as well in the context of restaurants. If you go to Thailand, they give you like a catalogue.
Yes.
The menu is a catalogue. They're like, we will make anything.
Yeah. And you're like, oh,
and you
I
sit
don't
there
know
for
what I want.
45 minutes thinking, do I want fish, chicken, eggs? But then you go to like a London fancy restaurant and there's like, we do this. Yeah. This is it.
So that's why you end up with people who, yes, go on 100 dates and don't actually end up with anybody because they haven't had that opportunity to filter.
Monogamy and polyamory.
Yes.
So can you define both of those words?
Yep.
And the thing that I found really striking is, I think I heard you say that satisfaction in either dynamic there, polyamory or monogamy, is roughly the same. Because I thought people in monogamous relationships were supposed to be way more happy than people that are in polyamorous relationships.
No. Not at all. So monogamy is a relationship state where there are two people who are... We have to define two sorts of monogamy. There's sexual monogamy. And that is you are exclusive to that other person. Sexually, you have sex with nobody else. And there is social monogamy. And that is you live with that person exclusively. So within the UK, most people, let's say if they have children...
Wait a minute, why do we have to divide monogamy up? And I get it, there's subsets to things, but let's boil it down to the real. Like people aren't, because now you're not intersecting, because if those two are separate, how can they even exist? Because then they're conflicting ideas, right?
Socially monogamous, they live in a household with their children with two people in it. Whereas sexual monogamy, you can be socially monogamous and not sexually monogamous. So they're two different things. But monogamy, if we talk about it in sort of lay terms, is two people who are exclusive to each other in terms of love, in terms of sex, and in terms of possibly living together. Monogamy itself is a social construct, mostly. We are not a monogamous species. There are, in fact, very few monogamous species in the world. Maybe, I think I read a book the other day that said something like 0.0.
Okay, so the facts are saying sexual monogamy is very rare in the animal kingdom. In birds, while approximately 90% form pair bonds, social monogamy, genetic studies show Many engage in mating outside the pair. Estimates put other sexually monogamous species at well under 1%. So, the great debate, are we to be monogamous as a society or are we not? If you wish to know where I stand on it, please do me this one favor. Hit that like button. If this video gets to 1,000 likes, which I'm not sure it will, but if it does, believe me, without a doubt, I'll let you know where I stand on it. But let's jump back into it.
0.02% of the animals on this planet are monogamous.
I do find this interesting, though.
Because what you will see in the wild and what you see mostly with humans is social monogamy. They live together. But we know that the infidelity rate sits generally at around 50%. So 50% of those households are not sexually monogamous. And in fact, from an evolutionary point of view, being sexually monogamous is a really quite bad idea because you are limiting yourself to a very narrow gene pool. And that's why there are very few creatures in the world that are truly sexually monogamous. When I was doing my master's, my professor studied gibbons. Gibbons at the time were known to be the monogamous ape. And he did a really longitudinal study, and he was the first to realise that no, they weren't. They were all sneaking off and doing it behind the rock with somebody else. But they were living together. But the female was going to find some better genes somewhere else. This guy, brilliant parent, not great genes. I'm going to go behind a rock and mate with this really good-looking gibbon over here because I'm going to get some good genes, and then he's going to raise the kid. And the guy is like, well, I'm obviously going to...
Even these animals y'all out here trying to be behind is unfaithful. That's crazy.
Have offspring here, but actually, mating with another female is not particularly costly to me, so I'll just go and do that over there, and let's hope she can raise them on her own, or maybe her partner will raise them for me. So there are very few. So we have monogamy mainly in the West because it's a socially prescribed form of organisation, and it was imposed because it is a form of control. It mainly sits in terms of rules, particularly in religion. But also there are many legal rules. For example, in Britain, you can't have two marriages, you can't be a bigamist. And it's about making everybody control. Because if we all just gave in constantly to precisely what our drives were saying, there'd be kind of chaos. And those in power wouldn't be able to predict what anybody is going to do. Because actually, I'm just going to go, I feel sexually attracted to whoever that is over there. I'm going to go mate with them, but I'm going to come back and live here. But then I've got a kid over there, and it's all really, really confusing. So over time, when civilization first arose, the more complex we got, and as we started to live together in cities, those in control were like, okay, I really need to be able to predict what these lesser beings are going to do. So I'm going to impose monogamy. You can only live with one person and basically have sex with one person.
I want to hear what y'all think about that. Are the powers that be forcing monogamy on us?
Nobody actually ever only had sex with one person, but we're going to look like we do. And those are the rules. And that's why we have legitimacy rules about children and inheritance and all that kind of thing, because it maintains control. So monogamy is, simply a social construct. It's not something that we've biologically evolved to do. And we know that part, there are many countries in the world where monogamy isn't what is prescribed.
How are those cultures getting on, the ones that aren't monogamous?
Fine.
Now, let's take a deep dive into the cultures that practice monogamy, or more specifically, polygyny, which means a man with multiple wives.
What cultures are those?
So you tend to get, so for example, in certain religions, so in certain forms of Islam, for example, men can have many wives. There are certain tribes which exist within sort of South America and in certain areas of Africa where you can have many wives. For example, there are some groups in Nepal, in the Himalayas, where we have what's known as polyandry. So one woman has many husbands. Usually, the reason why these different groupings evolved, like monogamy, is it's something to do with economics, generally. So, for example, in Nepal, in these areas, because they still have male inheritance of land, if, let's say we've got a family farm and there's 5 brothers, if all of those 5 brothers split the inheritance, then that farm would become uneconomic. You wouldn't be able to farm it and make money. So over time, what's evolved is one woman will marry all the brothers, so that when they inherit the farm, they will all carry on passing down, essentially.
So if it goes against our evolutionary design to be in monogamous relationships, doesn't that mean that there's a lot of people who are struggling against their
Absolutely.
Selves?
And that's why we have a reasonably high rate of people who have extramarital affairs. It's also why people who are polyamorous, or indeed have open relationships, say actually it's the more truthful way of being human.
Natural.
Because all they're doing is following their drives, and they actually believe that it's more moral. Because if you put forward a monogamous front and you have an affair, you are lying to people. You are keeping a secret from people you profess to love. Whereas if you're polyamorous or you're in an open relationship, you're actually openly saying, this is my drive, this is the reality, and I'm being truthful with everybody about it. So you can enter a relationship with me or not on the basis of truth. And that's what a lot of polyamorous people particularly will argue, is that they're really representing what is
true and
for
not,
most people an ancestral state. Polyamory is difficult because unlike open relationships such as swinging or being open.
Okay. See, now this is good because I don't conceptually think that swinging is okay. I think that polyamory is something that should be considered in relationships if that's the proclivities that you're into. Swinging, though, is just a way for you all to go burn and really getting caught up in some actual BS that you don't want to. Plus, it doesn't put into consideration your partner's both emotional and connections with you and or whatever else reciprocals that you have involved. All right, but swinging is a consensual practice where committed partners engage in non-romantic actual activities with other people while maintaining a primary relationship. I don't know. As a man myself, I would not be able to do that. If you're trying to have a side situation, it's a RZA rap for me, bro.
Call them consensual non-monogamy, that's just based on sex. So you're not spreading your love relationship, that emotional investment, that emotional intimacy amongst more than one person. Polyamory is being open and having several sexual partners and also having several emotionally intimate relationships at the same time. And I think people struggle more with that because of the issues of jealousy, right. And the fact that goes quite strongly against even our social ideas about monogamy, where we all sort of live in pairs.
I've got a friend of mine that's secretly in an open polyamorous relationship, basically where there's two couples and they are together.
Yeah.
So there's four of them basically, but they don't talk about it publicly because of the judgment.
Yeah.
And I think maybe part of the issue is that judgment that's...
For the polyamorous people I've interviewed, particularly for my book, that was the major thing, is that they were very happy in the relationship. The relationships were going really, really well. But what was difficult was being open about it, particularly with, for example, I'm talking to one woman who was like older members of the family. So she was going to a family wedding. And when she went to these occasions with this family, she could only ever take one of her partners. It always had to be the same partner because they had no idea the other partner existed, because that would be very difficult for them to take. Also, we know from studies that have been done looking at people's attitudes to polyamorous people, they are seen as immoral, they are seen as unloving, they're seen as cold because they have this ability to love lots of many, so they can't truly love anybody because they're splitting their heart between all these different people. Polyamorous people look at it the other way. As I've said, they actually think it's very moral because they're being truthful. Polyamorous relationships tend to be based on very open communication. That's one of the rules, is everybody still happy? Is everybody still happy with where the boundaries are? Has anybody upset anybody else? So it's very, very open. And they also believe that, and in some ways the support from this, we are able to love many friends at once, we're able to love many children at once. They say actually they don't split their heart. It's not a zero-sum game that you get 50% and you get 50%. Actually, that each time they take somebody into their lives, their heart just gets bigger.
Do you think we're all somewhat pretending to be monogamous?
I think some people are happier with monogamy. We know that partly from a genetic point of view. So there are some people, no, I don't think struggle with it. But I do think a reasonably significant number of people probably do.
Who do you think struggles with it more, men or women?
It really depends. Do you know something? That one of the major misnomers in love research is that there is much difference, that there's this major difference between men and women. There really isn't. Really isn't. It's more about who you are at your core, more about attachment style, personality, your life experience, your genetics, all these sorts of things are much more of a factor in whether or not you will be comfortable with monogamy or any of those aspects than whether or not you're male or female.
And again, you said that there's not a difference between well-being and satisfaction levels versus monogamous and polyamorous relationships?
No, absolutely not.
How do we know this?
Because we've done studies on it. We've asked, we use the same satisfaction scales about, how satisfied are you in your relationship with various aspects of that relationship, and they come out as being absolutely no different.
For what it's worth, babe.
I doubt that that's the real truth, and I'll take American studies and we'll see about that. I doubt that she's right though, because it's pretending that it's not a skewed number, so that way we don't have to dive deeper into what the actual facts are and to hide some of the dirty laundry over there.
I'm happy with our relationship. I'm more than happy being monogamous. I find it to be a much easier life.
Well, the only thing polyamorous people say is you have to have a cracking Google Calendar.
Yeah,
Yes.
the time, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the first 1,000 days. So you really believe that the first 1,000 days of a child's life are the most critical?
Yes.
And linked to this is the role of both the mother and the father. It's long been assumed that the father is surplus to requirements, that they're not really that important. As long as they're, in the stereotypical context, as long as they're providing for the family, they don't really need to be around. Is that true? And what do we need to know about how formative those first 1,000 days are for a child?
Okay. First of all, no, it's not true. It's absolutely fundamental, I think, for a child to get some input from a father. I'm going to define father.
What she's saying is absolutely true, and I don't know if we even need the definition of what a father is. The child needs to be a balanced individual. It's no way in the universe one parent has all the qualities to make a child a well-rounded person. A lot of people may feel like, oh yeah, I was able to do it. Yeah, but there are far few of us out here that actually made it out unscathed. A lot of us is stuck, okay? From single parent households, it's not the greatest look. And lo and behold, you would know if you're one of them.
In the West, we're a bit obsessed with the term biological father, and we always describe that as the real father, even if he's not around, even if that child has been brought up by a stepfather, an adoptive father, what we call a social father, which is a grandfather, an uncle, a best friend, an older brother. When I say father, people assume I mean biological father. I don't. I mean the man or men who have stepped in and done the job. That is the father. So I want to make that very clear, first of all. We know that young people who grow up without that input, the risks of having negative outcomes is much higher without having a male role model.
See, and then this is important right here because they're going to talk about the research that involves what happens to children that don't have a father figure in their lives. So let's just drop into it. So they say that research suggests that children without father figures or positive role models in their lives are more likely to face challenges like antisocial behavior, addiction, and mental health issues. However, factors like poverty and support systems also play a role in children in father-absent homes can strive with the right care and environment. Now, I'll tell you where there was a lot more involvement in the community, where we had the Boys and Girls Club, the Little Brother, but all of that went away with this whole, oh, well, they may do something crazy. But we should have put in better implementation to check on the mental health of the people that we're allowing in these places. But guess what? At the point where we stopped having all of that, do you see what they implemented though? See, people used to do this out of the love and the commitment of their own heart. This was a nonprofit organization. But then we circumvented that, the Little Brother, the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, for daycare, for TikTok, for Instagram, for Snapchat. We don't even interact with one another enough that we are more inclined to be in our devices than we are to talk to one another about real concerns. Luckily, I have a group of people behind me who I can speak to about various things. And I know that I can't speak to everybody about every single topic, but that's the point of community, where now we have delegated ourselves to being super people that don't need anybody else. Superman even had the Justice League because he can't be everywhere at once. Superman has a woman, a wife, and he got a son, and they raise him together, not one on her own, because guess what? His wife also makes more money than him. And I'm just talking about it, like, just think about it in a perfect way, man. Like, what would really work, not what is not going to work.
Some male role models in your life. We know that they are much more likely to
Thank
display
you,
antisocial
Sage, bro.
behavior.
I appreciate you.
They are much more likely to turn to crime. They are much more likely to have addiction issues. They're much more likely to have mental health issues. And their outcomes in terms of relationships going through their life in other aspects of their lives are much more negative. And there is a reason for that. So men have...
Yeah, the reason is for half of their life, you kept half of their life away from them. Because again, to be a whole person, you need to know the story of both sides. And even though I was a product of technically a single parent household, my father was very much involved. He didn't live in the same state, but I knew who my father was. I knew his story. I was involved. You know, it's very different from what we have today, where a mother will hate the father so much that a child will go 15, 10 years without seeing their father, and they're not even in jail. It's just because you don't like him no more, or he didn't pay some child support to you, because you're mad because he got a new family and they're happy. That's sick work.
Have a very specific role in child development. And I wasn't expecting to find this when I first started, but I've looked at fathering around the world in many, many different cultures, and how men arrive at that role is very different. The fathering role is much more diverse than the mothering role. It's partly because the mother's role is very tied by biology, by pregnancy, childbirth, etc. Whereas men, we call it a facultative role. And what that means is it's much more flexible. It's much more open to responding to changes in the environment and adapting to them to help the family survive. And we see that all the way around the world. So dads do it lots of different ways. It really depends in your environment what the major risk is. So in our environment, you know, we don't really have survival risks in our environment, not to the extent that they do in some cultures. So as a dad in societies where survival, day-to-day survival is a problem, whether it's a war zone or whether there are major disease issues, then a dad's role there is to keep that kid alive. If we look at other environments where survival is reasonably secure, but economic survival is very on.
The fathers that go through all of this, it's not like they're praised, you know? And it's funny now because it used to be a time where you could even see movies where they would show a father doing all that he could for his family. Now this is where it gets crazy. Like, I'll even put it like this. People take their dogs more seriously than they do their families now. It's very critical to have a father in your child's life, because he'll go to hell and high water for that baby, for your family. When you're with the right man and the right person, you will get more than what you expected.
Then in those environments, we tend to see fathers, again, not particularly hands-on in terms of caretaking or nurturing. They are the person in that kid's life who's going to teach them the skills they need to go forward and be economically successful. So if you live in a pastoral environment, then they will be taken into the fields and they will be taught how to do that role. And then they will be taken to the markets and they will be taught how to negotiate and build the social networks they need. And then in our environment, where economics is reasonably secure comparatively, survival is reasonably secure comparatively, then social survival is important. In our world, it really is who you know. But what I found, regardless of how you were doing it, was all fathers have one major role, and it's a bit of a technical term, and I'll explain what it is. They scaffold the child's entry into the world beyond the family. And what that means is they are the parent when it comes to developing.
So for the ladies, right, as you can see, if you're going to be looking for the right person, it's putting aside all of the other BS that the media is going to put out for you. It is setting aside that you are going to have the ability to choose somebody else. But guess what? The only way you can have a proper family life and relationship is to learn how to lock in with one person, if that's what you really want to do. If you want to be a wife, if you want to be a husband, this works for you guys too. You know, you have to understand what it really takes. And the fact that we don't understand And the best way I could say it is, ladies, you have lost the ability to understand what it is us guys are looking for, especially here in the West, because I have traveled myself and I see that, like she said, in other places that aren't overly socialized with the internet, see the truth about what relationships really are and how to bond and consider the other person's feelings. But here we lose that because it's so centralized on you doing you. But guess what? You can't build an empire by your damn self. And if your only thing is getting to the bag, you've already failed. And that's a fact.
The skills, the neural connections, the biology, the physiology that enables you to leave your...
And okay, Sage, I'm going to address your comment directly. There are commonalities, and we spoke about that. You weren't in the video earlier, but there are so many commonalities with everybody. But the hippocampus, because she has the brain down at the bottom there, we have gotten to the point where now there are certain things that would fire off in the hippocampus, in the frontal lobe area of your brain, that would turn you off to certain things. But we've convinced ourselves to lose attraction for what we actually like. But she also made a very, very critical point that we have lost as well, is that you have to upkeep how you look. On 80%, 85 and more, right? For both men and women, I'm going to give y'all both the separate statistics, okay? For the guys, they want broader shoulders with a slimmer waist, but they want it to be square look. So your shoulder to waist ratio should be 1.5 times. So you should have square shoulders, large, and they should be larger than your waist. For the ladies, men want a Coke bottle shape. Now, this is just the visual, okay? Now, for the guys, you want to be more assertive, but they don't want you to be unkind. So they want to see you treat people nicely, but they also want you to assert your dominance in situations where you have to take charge. Okay, so for example, we're putting this on a date. For the guys, you get the waiter to come over, asserting your dominance. Make sure that your order is taken correctly, asserting your dominance. Then you politely, after that is done, say thank you. Simple. You don't have to give them a smile, a wink, or anything else. Go about your fucking day. And that's how you win that situation. Now, for the ladies, we just want you to come there, have an air of niceness, be accommodating, and be interested in what we are trying to bring to your life. If you're not, if it's boring, be honest. Just say that's something I wouldn't find myself interested in. Don't be weird. Don't be ghosty. Just keep it a buck.
family and go out into the world and be successful, to thrive and survive. And it starts when a baby is born. So the attachments that a dad and a mum build to that baby are just as powerful as each other, but they are different. So a mum's attachment is based upon nurture. And what we tend to say with a mum and child attachment is it's quite exclusive. So if you imagine a mother, her major role with that child is to nurture and protect. And so when she's with that child, she will hold that child to her. It's very inward looking. With dads, they do nurture. Absolutely, they nurture, they do all that kind of thing. But they use that nurturing to build confidence in that child as a secure base, which is what attachment's about. And what they actually do is they turn the child to the world and they go, okay, you're safe with me. I am always here. But I'm going to give you a push. And you're going to go out into the world and you're going to see what the world is like. And I'm going to be the person who gives you the resilience and gives you the social skills and gives you what you need to be able to do that. And you can always come back to me when it goes wrong. So what we say with a father's attachment is it's based on nurture and challenge. Mum is very nurturing. Dad is stimulation. I'm going to stimulate you and you're going to go and do something amazing. And that is why you need fathers, because those outcomes we have for kids who don't have an input from a father figure, the reason why they struggle with antisocial behaviour is it's because dads are the ones that underpin social behaviour, pro-social behaviour, like helping, sharing, caring, emotional regulation and inhibition. You need to learn to regulate your emotions and inhibit them appropriately to get on in this world. You can't go into the school and you cannot go into the workplace screaming your head off when you get angry. That's not.
And see, this is why a lot of you guys have been failing in this life, because there was no person to regulate those emotions. It was this oh, you got enabled by hugs and kisses when you threw a temper tantrum and stuff like that. And I've seen it so much growing up that you could just get away with damn near murder. And the adults today, be damned, right? And I'm gonna just be honest, guys. I don't think we're gonna get through the whole video this evening. I'm gonna go through probably the next section, and then we're gonna cut it off and come back another time. Sage, my good guy, if you're still in here, you were talking about the commonalities. What I want to do is intersect this video with another video that talks about how to self-maximize and get to the best version of yourself and try to get in a realm where dating really works for you. So let's let this rock.
How it works. We know that fathers, when it comes to education, both mums and dads have a pretty equal input in terms of academic success, but fathers have a greater role in instilling appropriate learning behaviour. Being in the classroom, taking in what's going on, cooperating with other people, cooperating with the teacher, not disturbing everybody else, that kind of thing. They are the ones that underpin that.
How do they do that? Is it chemically or is it?
It's several things. It's partly chemical. So we know that one of the earliest behaviours you will see a father do with a child from about 6 months on is a thing called rough and tumble play.
Rough and tumble play.
Okay. And men seem to be drawn to it. Not all men do it, and we'll talk about the people who don't find it comfortable. But most men, when we just tell them to go and do something with their kid, they're not going to do some colouring. They're going to take the kid outside, they're going to throw it in the air, they're going to chase it around the garden, they're going to aeroplane it.
First off, why is she calling these kids it? The way she said it like that. But I get what she's saying. You know, fathers will test the baby's limits more so than a mother. A mother coddles them into, or a mother nurtures what they are naturally into within a safer manner. A father pushes those limits by, like they said, throwing their child in the air, bringing them back down and catching them, throwing them in the pool to try to see if they'll try to swim. Of course, mostly kiddie pools and stuff like that. But we as fathers, we test the limits so that way the child knows that they can try to do more than what they would. And that really actually makes a successful person. Because if you don't know how to push your limits, you always divert yourself to doing the safe thing. And I know a lot of people now are so caught up in that safe thing that they never progress in their life. You're still living with your mom. How are you over 30 still living at your mama's house? Unless you're taking care of your parents, I don't want to hear it. For real. I don't.
With their head, they're going to come in, they're going to bounce on the sofa, they're going to do a little wrestling. There's lots of shrieking, there's lots of energy. And we see pretty much all Western fathers do that. And the reason for it is twofold. First of all, it's a very quick way of bonding with your child. Dads have to bond through interaction. They don't have the head start of childbirth, which is a whole tsunami of bonding hormones. So they do it through interaction. And rough and tumble play is a really time-efficient way to do it. You get a massive tidal wave of bonding hormones because it's so physical, so you get beta-endorphin, because there's lots of touch, there's lots of giggling, so all of these things release dopamine, beta-endorphin, oxytocin. They bond you tightly to the child you're playing with, and the child gets them as well. But also it's starting to underpin some teaching about social skills, because the basis of all social behaviour is reciprocity, is give and take. And when we play with someone, it only remains fun if that reciprocity is reasonably balanced. You learn empathy, because you've got to work out, is this still fun for the other person, or are they no longer enjoying this? Have I gone too far? You learn to deal with challenge. Rough and tumble play can be pretty extreme. It can be a little bit painful. It can be a little bit risky. And so you're saying to the kid, assess the risk, assess the risk. Here's the challenge. Can you deal with the challenge? And all of that underpins that child's neural development, first of all, but also you're showing, by example, social skills. I'm saying reciprocity. But what's really interesting, and I love this piece of research, and this came out from a group in Israel headed by Ruth Feldman, who is a pioneer of neuroscience in terms of children and their parents. She found that dads and children have co-evolved to prefer to play with each other. Okay, so when you're a parent, you will get a peak in oxytocin from certain behaviours you do with your child. You'll always get a bit of oxytocin because anything you do with them is probably very nice, apart from maybe the tantrums. But if you're a dad, that peak in oxytocin comes from playing with your kid. And then when we look at kids, when the peak in oxytocin release they get when they're playing with their dads, again, isn't when daddy gives me a cuddle, which is nice, but, you know, I don't get a big release. It's when I play with daddy.
So is that different to women?
Yes. So women get their peak in of oxytocin released from nurturing their children, particularly from hugging them. And kids get their peak in oxytocin when they interact with mum, from mum's cuddles, not from playing with mum. So naturally, kids kind of gravitate towards dads when they want to have fun. And dad, that's the kind of thing he will choose to do with his child. Something that's physical, something that's stimulatory. And that's what's really interesting. And that's, in a way, why dad's kind of got the moniker of, oh, you're the fun parent, you do all the fun stuff. But actually, play is fundamental to a child's development, absolutely fundamental to their social development, and also building that really critical bond with.
And see, right there, too, this would have stopped a lot of y'all from being fat as hell. All right? If you had a daddy around that was telling you, like, look, you need to run around that track a little bit. You know, if you had somebody that pushed your limits, and I'm being funny a little bit, but being honest, if you had somebody that pushed you a little bit harder, I don't think a lot of us would be in a place. And I think we would actually have a lot more better athletes, which is crazy to say. Because we have some amazing athletes right now. But I think that more fathers in the household, we would have football teams, soccer teams, the stuff of legends. I'm talking about Tom Brady's like 17 of them. All right? Steph Curry's coming out every damn season. All right? It would be crazy.
Dad.
If I was to have a baby now, how would my body, my brain, my body, how would it change?
As a man?
It would change in two ways. There's the biological changes you would undergo. So this is something that we didn't know about 20 years ago, and I and other colleagues around the world have looked into this. And the reason why we looked into it is because, as I said, very rare to have human fathering, really rare, 5% of mammals. And the way evolution works is it generally doesn't cause a whole new behaviour to evolve without giving you some sort of head start in being able to do it. And so over time, in the last 500,000 years, as fatherhood evolved, men's brains change, their psychology changes, their hormones change when they become fathers to give you that prep to be a parent. So first of all, we see hormonal changes. The most studied, and I think probably the most significant, is the drop in testosterone that occurs when you become a father. So you will have already experienced a drop in testosterone because you're in a long-term relationship.
No, I haven't.
Yes, you have. So when a man enters a long-term relationship for the first time, he will experience...
I hope y'all hearing that. When you get into a long-term relationship for the first time, your testosterone going to take a dip. So you got to keep yourself. You got to maintain frame. That's something else Kevin Samuels is talking about. Maintaining frame no matter what if you're going to be in a relationship.
It's a drop in testosterone. Because testosterone is a really great chemical if you're dating, because it makes you more competitive and it makes you more attractive if you're in a heterosexual relationship. So it makes you more attractive. But when you start living with someone or being in a long-term relationship, we kind of need you to shift your focus from the horizon and looking for another date. And we need you to focus on that one person, because from an evolutionary point of view, that person is going to be the person you have kids with. And we'd quite like you to stick around and look after those kids. So that happens. When you become a father for the first time, it drops again. And it can be up to 30%. So you lose a third of your testosterone. And the reason for that, again, is we need you to focus in on the family. We can't have you looking to the horizon for another mate. We need to focus it because we know that children need input from more than just mum to survive.
This sounds all very monogamous.
I'll talk about it in a minute. Okay. So this is so you focus in on that child. Testosterone is also when it's very high, it blocks the bonding hormones. So dopamine and oxytocin in particular have less of an effect. So the testosterone drops also to enable you to start bonding with that child, because you are behind in terms of bonding with that child because mum's gone through pregnancy in most cases and given birth. So she's had a head start. She's had a load of oxytocin, dopamine and beta endorphin during the birth process. You haven't. So we need to release those hormones as soon as we can. One of the ways we do that is testosterone drops, so oxytocin and dopamine are more effective.
Which explains why some fathers say that they don't feel bonded to their child in the early stages or before.
Yeah, I'll explain why that is as well in a minute. So that's oxytocin and dopamine. We also know, just generally from studies, whether men are fathers or not, men with lower testosterone tend to be more motivated to care for children. So even if you're not a father, if we present you with a crying baby, men with very high testosterone, the reaction to that is mainly aversive, like, okay, just take it away from me. And also they get quite frustrated. They find it quite difficult to deal with as a noise. Men with low testosterone tend to be more motivated to pick the baby up, try and soothe the baby and deal with it. And whilst it's a difficult noise to hear, they tend not to experience negative emotions in relation to it. So that drop in testosterone is really, really important. Over evolutionary time, we think that people were probably socially monogamous for a period of time which matched the period of time they needed to ensure that our child's going to survive. So whilst in our, culture, it's like, no, you will marry till you die. You will be monogamous till you die. In evolutionary history, that probably wasn't the case. Fathers might have stuck around for probably at least until childhood, which is between about 5 and 10. They might have stayed on into the teenage years, depending upon how difficult the environment was. And also, this doesn't mean they weren't having sex somewhere else. So this is social monogamy. We also see changes in oxytocin rises. If you live with your pregnant partner, it will start to rise in pregnancy, as will your partners. And that's there to make sure, first of all, that your bond to your partner tightens, because you're about to introduce somebody new into your relationship and it's not going to be easy. So we need that to be tight, but it's also to start preparing you for afterbirth. We know that vasopressin also rises. Vasopressin is a sort of form of oxytocin.
Okay, so vasopressin is a neuropeptide hormone that involves a territorial behavior, especially in males. Research has shown that an increase in vasopressin is expectant in expectant or new fathers, particularly among those highly involved in caregiving. So that just means that you get this special hormone if you are more involved in your child's caregiving than you would not be. So those are for the mom dads or the dads, stay-at-home dads, or whatever you want to call them.
But in non-human mammals, it's associated with defense of the nest. And we think in male humans, it's to do with protection and motivation to protect that child. And finally, we see an increase in a parenting hormone known as prolactin. And prolactin is only seen in males.
Now, I know about prolactin.
Species.
An increase in the hormone prolactin is seen in males only in species where the fathers are involved in caregiving, including humans. This increase is associated with prenatal behavior, greater sensitivity to infant cues, and reduced testosterone, which helps to shift focus from mating to caregiving. All right, y'all.
That have investing fathers. And prolactin, again, is a parenting hormone that motivates you to care. So you go through this massive change in hormones. A lot of men say they don't notice the drop in testosterone in terms of things like strength. So I get contacted by a lot of men saying, but I love weight training. Mm-hmm. Is this going to ruin my... No, it's not. It doesn't do anything like that. Think of the number of Olympic athletes who have kids. You're fine. What it does do is it increases your emotional vulnerability. So quite often with fathers, you will hear they're more empathetic after birth, and also they find it harder to deal with emotionally difficult things, particularly like on the news. Suddenly, things on the news will make them cry when they never cried before.
Will they ever get their testosterone levels back?
Only if you don't have contact with your child. So if you don't have contact with your child, you don't have...
Yo, that was perfect. What? So never touch your child, bro. You got to limit your time with your child. Don't become
co-reside with your child. These studies have been done across cultures, including cultures where co-residence doesn't occur. As long as you are in contact with your child, no, they won't, because you are still maintained in looking after that child. If you lose contact with your child, yes, they will go back up, because the evolutionary drive is to then reproduce again.
So if I have a kid and then I stick around and raise the kid, assuming I stick around, my testosterone levels will never get back to the level it was before I had the kid.
No, never.
I mean, that's slightly... I'll love my future kid, I'm sure.
I will say to dads, because they do worry about it, and I understand why they worry about it, because they believe very much that testosterone is the male hormone. It is and it isn't. Women have testosterone, and it's one of the sex hormones. It's not.
Don't let your
really isn't
testosterone
associated
fall
with
for
things
no
like
reason.
stress. You might find things like if you have a tendency to aggression, you might find that drops a little bit. And as I say, you become more empathetic and you become more emotionally vulnerable. But it's not going to impact a huge amount physiologically in you. So really don't worry about it. And also, you get the most amazing rewarding bond with your kid in return. So you drop the testosterone, but you get this astonishing bond. So it swings and roundabouts.
You said earlier that if the father's not around, there's implications for teenage mental health?
Yes. So because fathers underpin resilience, through starting with rough and tumble play, but carrying on through that child's life and doing stimulatory activities with that kid. They're the ones that underpin mental resilience. And obviously mental resilience is particularly key for mental health. Also because they underpin scaffolding the child's ability to operate in the social world. A lot of the disorders we see in teenage young people are associated with social situations. So social anxiety, eating disorders, self-harm, depression, loneliness, they tend to all exist within the social sphere. And because of that, that's why it's actually the relationship you have with your dad particularly
So if you're not understanding what they're saying that the increase in mental health issues is also because fathers are lacking in the family homes today.
attachment relationship you have. So if it's a nice, secure attachment relationship, you are much less likely to suffer from those disorders. And also, particularly, how much time your dad spends with you and inputs into you is important. So kids are really interesting. They measure their importance to their parents in different ways. If you say to them, how do you know you're important to your mum? They'll say, well, my mum does stuff for me. She makes sure I've got my favourite cereal. She makes sure that I get picked up from school and I can have my play dates. And she, makes sure my sports kit is washed. And I mean, it's all terribly gender specific. I do apologise, but this is the data. If you say to the kid, how do you know you're important to your dad? He spends time with me. And we think it's probably cultural because in our culture, dads are still more likely to be out at work. So the precious thing you have as a man is your time. And if I give my time to you as a child, particularly if I do something you're interested in and I accept you as an individual and say, yeah, let's be enthusiastic about what you want to do, then that is what underpins how you feel, how important that child feels, and that underpins their self-esteem.
Because I talked about ketosis on this.
All right, y'all. So this one is going to wrap up right here. And next time we'll get into the rest of this video. Yeah, we got to get it in 4K. So I appreciate you all for watching. If you have enjoyed the content, please hit that like button for me. Hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss the next one, because we're going to keep this conversation going. And as always, my good people, live as long as you want, never want as long as you live, and always squeeze the best juice out of life. Peace.